Hey, and welcome back to episode 66 of the Cellarcast. Uh, this one's also going to be coming out a little late, but it's for, I don't know, a different reason from last time. Last time, of course, I was just way too goddamn busy making that eye video, which I'm glad that people who watched it seemed to enjoy. It's funny because I went back and I didn't rewatch it. There were a couple things. There were a couple things that I what am I saying? I'll restart. Remember, I gotta get my brain revving up. Uh, I think I was going back and just looking at a couple sections, and actually, what I did is I went and I watched the Mandalore gaming review of it. So one thing that I do is that unless I'm researching something, I won't go if I'm doing like a specific game. I won't really look up any other things about it that I haven't already seen. Like reviews or something like that. Just because I don't want to like, I don't know. I don't want to like cross. I feel like it gets me too into my own head about like, oh, I need to say something that's different or something like that instead of just giving, letting it kind of naturally. It kind of like what's like taints the pool. I don't know what you'd call that. I want to be like the control group. Like I don't know, I barely know anything about this game. I want to go in knowing as little as possible, because that's what a lot of other people are going to go in knowing. Whereas like, so the Mandalore review is interesting, and I think it's a good video. For one, it's much shorter, and he doesn't really cover the whole game, but his his video is coming from the perspective of someone who's played it like, who's at least tried to play it at that point. He tried to play it like 3 times or something like that, and that review was the first time he actually managed to get through. So he already like knew stuff about the game. So like for instance, one thing that kind of flew over my head is I kind of used like 2 weapons the whole game, pretty much. I used the basic starter, like SMG, and the sniper, because those were the most effective things for the way that I felt like playing the game. And I didn't really experiment with the other weapons. One, just because, like, I don't know. I'm the type of person who I play. I play a game and I find the thing that works for me, and then I just kind of stick to that, and I don't really do anything else unless the game forces me to. Like it heavily incentivizes me experimenting with something else. So there was actually one point where I did switch over to what the main weapon I was using was. Huh? That doesn't make any sense. I switched over the main weapon I was using, and I was using like a machine gun or something as opposed to an SMG. And it had the SMG holds like 100. The clip size is like 100, and the machine gun was like 30, and I was just constantly running out of ammo. And I was like, yeah, I'm going back to the SMG. And then I never looked back. Besides like that last section where I switched over to the minigun, which they just let you have from the beginning, which I didn't even think about how funny that is. They just let you have something like that at the very start. And to be fair, the way the game is designed, that isn't like, I don't think that's super broken. But yeah. Because even, there was stuff I had to like I chose to not include in the script just because like, there's so much. Like there's way too much in that game to go over in like a single video and keep it. I mean, the video's over an hour long, and there was stuff that I didn't even talk about. Like there's, for instance, one little aspect of it is that there is a class system in the game. Not like a defined set class like that you select. Like obviously there's a character creator where you're rolling for stats, but basically there's like a little terminal in the library that tells you, well, if you spec into these stats, that's considered this kind of a build, and depending on what level you are, there's like 3 different ranks for each build essentially. So there's something like, I don't know, like a dozen or more than a dozen different classes based on what build you go with. If you spec into like a specific stat or 2 different stats, I think it there might be like 1 or 2 where you go into 3 different stats mainly, but yeah. And every time you finish a mission, it tells you what class, so to speak, you're playing, or you've kind of built into. The problem with that is that if you're playing solo, then you're basically railroaded into the all-rounder class, which they call equilibrium. Okay, we're good. God damn. Okay, the cord. I gotta get like a different USB cord for my mic. It's always slipping out. It's pissing me off. Right. So the all-rounder class is Equilibrium Fist. You're basically stuck playing that one because in order to just get through the game solo, you kind of have to like put points, like spread your points out, like very generally, like accuracy for your shooting, a couple strength for when you have to use melee, hacking for parts where you gotta hack, medicine especially. So like medicine, like you have to be healing a lot because you're just going to be taking a lot of shots from enemies randomly spawning. You're going to have to using the med kit a lot. Medicine, the higher your medicine stat, the faster it regenerates, because the weird way the med kit works, you might have noticed this from the footage, I didn't really point it out, but you could have noticed it. The weird way the med kit works is that, well, for one, it's a syringe, it's not like a kit, but it recharges up to like a certain amount of health, and then you can use it, and then it goes down to 0, and then you have to wait for it to recharge again. Also, apparently you can overdose on it, which never happened to me, but immersive sim, you know? Like, okay, I don't know what that does for the game, but alright. The game is it's so strange, because someone pointed out in a comment that the game, one of the biggest problems with the game is, and I thought this was so great, is its failure to communicate its own design. And I think that rings true for a lot of it, because the E.Y.E is a really, it can be a really fun game. Like when people say that this is like their favorite game of all time, or this game's some kind of the people who love this game, I totally believe that. I totally think that they have perfectly like valid reasons for having that reaction to the game. I did not. At the end of the day, I don't think it's excuse me, I don't think it's bad in the same way I'd call something like, I don't know, Zen, the Intergalactic Ninja, bad. I just think that it's, for such an open game, you have to enjoy it in a very specific way, if that makes sense. I went in expecting some kind of immersive sim RPG like shooter, and what I got was a lot more than I bargained for, and which was not immediately obvious. Like, the fact that the story is so unimportant really flies over your head when you're constantly like being fed story stuff in the first in the first few hours, right? And the fact that the story is intentionally vague and like very obtuse sets up like this mystery, right? So you're constantly, what's so silly, I won't say stupid, but what's so silly and kind of frustrating is that going through the first time, it's so, I'm like, there has to be something more, right? Like, there has to be something, some kind of twist or something like that going on here, because it's so intentionally vague and weird, but I also couldn't tell how much of the weirdness of the game was just from the developers being amateurs. And it turns out that the majority of the story isn't important. Most of the stuff that's going on is not important, which I brought up in the video, but it makes it confusing because it's like setting up this almost like breadcrumb trail that ultimately feels meaningless. Uh, Besides like the whole reincarnation gimmick, uh, the vast majority. It's also the vast majority of the game is not plot relevant, and it's also why like I was working. I'm like, fuck, this is so long. This script was like 10,000 words. I'm like, this is so long, and I'm thinking like, is there a way that I could split this up? And then I realized like the way the game is structured, I can't. Number one is I would like it to be one video just because for artistic reasons, because I'd like to like I need to like make the video in a way that sells how mind-boggling the game is, and I think you just need the sheer runtime to get that like I want you to feel by the end of the video like you've gone on a journey, like you've been taken for a ride, Marvel 2 style. And splitting that up with like, okay, if I put like a week in between uploads, you don't get that feeling from it. Like I need to convey how epic this game is in scope. And then two, the way the game is structured, there's no like halfway mark. Like when I was doing the Mega Man comic, it's 16 issues, right? And the 8th issue ends on a cliffhanger pretty much. So I'm like, okay, this is shaping up to be really long. So why don't I like just cut it in half? And I have like a decent. I'll just do 8 in one video and 8 in the next, and I'll wrap it up. And like I thought that worked out pretty well, because it's also like not something where like, yeah, it's crazy and it just goes and goes and goes, but I don't. Part of what I want to convey, I didn't like necessarily have to convey, feel the need to convey that it was, I don't know, that same sense of scope. It's just like, here's 30 minutes of craziness, here's another 30 minutes of craziness picking up from last time. That was like felt like a clean break to me. That was also something I struggled with like the Die Hard series, where I was like, okay, what are the natural stopping points? Because I need to split this up. What are the natural stopping points, and kind of what stories do I dedicate each video to, basically, while kind of keeping in a chronological order. I sort of bounced around in Die Hard, but that's because there was so much stuff going on. There were so many like weird plot lines happening at different points. Like I could probably make a timeline of what happened, and also just a bunch of stuff that there were no clear like dates. So just like, yeah, just pull this story out of the ether. But anyway, yeah. So it was just a stressful video. I'm glad people enjoyed it. But was there anything else I wanted to talk about with I? Like, oh yeah. So someone left that comment, and what their take was that it seemed like the best way to play it was multiplayer, right? Because people in your little squad of like maybe 4 people, or up to 32, God forbid, people in like your little squad can actually play. They can actually like go into different builds. You can have different play styles. You can have one guy who specs into like certain kinds of, like, one guy just takes heavy weapons and all he does is take accuracy and like endurance. And he's just like he literally just plays like heavy from TF2. One guy takes just a bunch of like speed, and he just does like light armor and melee weapons, and specs into like all the like speed and speed boost stuff, upgrades his legs, his cyber legs, and just runs around and cuts people down. One guy specs into medicine and just goes around healing other people. One thing that I didn't mention, the medkit's primary fire, like the left click, is to heal another player. The right click is to heal yourself. That really tripped me up the first time I had to use it, because it was like in the middle of an intense. I was like I was being shot. I was like, oh, I need it, and then I left click and I stab forward in the air with it, and I'm like, oh, and then I right click and I'm like, okay, then you heal yourself with it. Uh, like it's made the primary fire is for another player. It's to heal an ally. So, which is weird because, like, again, the game's story is so common. Like, it's so present. It isn't like. I'm trying to think of another sandbox game that you just kind of. Like, I don't know, something like a roguelike. Or, Symphony of the Night. I'll take this as just a random example. Symphony of the Night. Yeah, it does have, like, a plot and stuff, of course. But the actual. There's, like, 3, 4, maybe 5 plot points that happen in that game. Like, where you're actually. Okay, something happens in the plot. Most of the game is just you playing it, right? It's just the story of the gameplay, so to speak. And that game, really, what I came to understand when I was done with it is. Symphony of the Night is really like a big sandbox, is one of the things that's neat about it. That game's a big sandbox, and the story is not super present. So, like, they made that multiplayer Castlevania game, right, that no one remembers. It was like Harmony of Dissonance or something like that. And I haven't played it. I've heard, like, mixed things about it, but conceptually it makes a lot of sense. Like, oh yeah, I mean, if you just up, like, okay, you just increase the ways that one character can, like, differentiate themselves and kind of build out into different sorts of play styles, and then you have people, like, work together. That could work in, like, that kind of a genre. In it's weird, and it almost feels like it doesn't fit because no one is playing. Or what am I talking about? The story is just kind of like, okay, well, to get to the next story mission, you gotta like talk to Ramona, and you gotta, like, have these conversations with characters and stuff like that. In order to accept side quests, you gotta talk to characters. There's, like, always some kind of story thing happening. Also, in multiplayer, only one person can view dialogue. Only one person can get, like, a cutscene, sort of, or dialogue sequence. That's it. No one else can do it. So, like, it's clearly not compatible. Like, it's built to be a separate thing. But also, you have, like, a single character. Like, when you create your character, that's, like, it's like making a character in an MMO or something. Like, you're making a character, and then you can play them in single player or multiplayer. It's basically the same thing. Essentially, it's so weird. The game is essentially like a Half-Life 2 multiplayer mod, where the maps are like multiplayer maps, except you're just playing them as just by yourself, and there's NPCs there that use, like, code from, like, that's modded to be like an RPG, and the enemy AI is basically multiplayer bots. They're basically like multiplayer bots, so sometimes they just mess up, and that's why their behaviors are so, like, unstructured, or if that makes sense. Like, they're so generic. They're just, like, I don't even think of, like, what the enemy types are. There's people who shoot at you, which is, like, all the gangsters, all the feds, the cynicals. The gangsters and the feds also, like, just throw grenades sometimes. There's a couple of the Strombolis. Like, there's the one Stromboli type that throws fireballs. There's ones that leap and do a melee. There's the werewolves who just run up and do a melee. There's the hammer guys who just run up and do a melee. Like, really just basic behaviors. So just, like, shooting plus grenade, throwing a fireball, melee, with the potential of, like, oh, you can do a little leap, like the little Tyranid guys. And then I guess the I members you fight at the end, who all just are literally just player characters. They're actually literally just player characters. Just, like, because all the armor, all the armor is just reused. There's, like, 6 different models or something for the light, medium, heavy, and then Coulter and John uniforms, and and they just throw them with a random weapon set up, and they just have them to fight you. They just throw waves of them at you. It's like the enemy types are very basic because they're literally just programmed to work like basically multiplayer bots, and sometimes they just bug out, and the game will just randomly spawn them out of sight most of the time. Again, I swear to God, there was one point where I was playing and I totally saw an enemy pop into existence in front of me, and I couldn't find it in my footage. I should have taken a note of it or something, but yeah. It's an interesting game. Like, if you're going into the game and you, like, know how to play it in a way that it kind of wants to be played, you can have a ton of fun with it. I'm sure. And, like, again, I thought I was pretty honest with, like, the way that I played it is not how you are supposed to play it. And I couldn't have known, which I think is a problem. Because it's not like, oh, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. It's so, like, for instance, I played Moonbase Alpha for the first time a few weeks ago, just because I thought it looked neat. I just seen it. I didn't quite know what it was, but I found out, oh, it's like a NASA training video game. So I boot up the game, and it's free, pretty sure. I boot up the game, and there isn't like a single player thing. It's just like you create a lobby, and there's a various game types, and the smallest like lobby you can make is 1 to 2 players. So I'm playing the game, and I figure out basically what you need to do over the course of like 30 minutes, and like 1 or 2 failed playthroughs, and eventually I realize, oh, it's just like, it's just not made for one person to do, which makes sense because it said 1 to 2 players. And I think it says something about it's recommended that you don't play it solo. I think you can finish the game solo. It's only like 20 minutes, but it's not made for that. It's made for 2 people. Like, the timing is super tight. Super duper tight if you're going to be doing it solo. I does not even have anything like that. It just, like, you start it up and everything feels like a single player game, but it's like almost not even designed for that. It's so weird. It's so strange. Yeah, interesting game. I almost have the inkling to go back and play it just to like try and explore it more, but just the janky, weird, fucked up parts of the game, like the enemy spawning is one of the biggest hurdles for me, just because it's just random. It's random, and it just, like, it's too chaotic and messy, and it just feels like I'm just responding to random threats that are popping up, and I don't know. The combat was not that interesting to me. It was perfectly serviceable, but just, I don't know. I feel like randomness a lot of times, like something like random enemy spawns or random generation, is more often just like a way for developers to get away with not like handcrafting something, which I get that that's hard, but I think I don't know, I prefer it. I think that the returns are not as great. I'm not a huge fan of like just randomly generating everything. Yeah, it's, well, yeah. Again, because I had so many thoughts on this game, and a lot of them couldn't make it into the video. So if I come up with anything else that I was thinking about, then, oh yeah, and I totally forgot to mention that the game was actually based off of, well, I did remember to mention this. Okay, so the game is based on a sci-fi tabletop RPG called Ava. Ava was created by the developers. It was created by Strumon Studios. They have never released it. So this game's whole... Excuse me. Oh, God. So this game's whole convoluted, messy lore is based off of a game that basically doesn't exist. Essentially, effectively, does not exist. And also you're seeing it through the eyes of, like, an insane person. it's so, like, there's so many layers to it. I went back and I forgot to mention it in the script, so I went back, I re-recorded it, and then guess what? I looked back at the recording, and my freaking USB little thing, the whatever, the little, my mic came unplugged during it, so there's just no audio for the little retake thing I did. So I was like, oh fuck. I guess I'll just have to redo it, and then I forgot which part that was because I just had to get into the meat of editing it. I couldn't remember which part exactly I'd re-recorded because there were so many things. There were so many little details in that video that I had to like go back and write stuff in about. Anyway, that was a big spiel because we didn't really have any comments. I did want to mention one funny little tidbit from last week about the Street Fighter 6 TGS announcement. It was just this moment. Okay, so they had this lady translating, and I felt really bad for her because at first I thought she was like a text-to-speech program. She wasn't. She was obviously like very nervous, and which is understandable, right? And I don't hold that against her, but it was funny just because like the demands of having to translate that stream, like not only do you have to translate all this crazy shit they're talking about, they're also like, it's also a panel of like 4 or 5 people, like some of the developers and like the producers and the director, and like there's like 6 people talking, and she has to like figure out like what to say, and they're doing like live commentary of a match, and they're like explaining new mechanics, and I'm pretty sure they're using like jargon and stuff that she probably doesn't even like know the first thing about. So like I felt kind of bad for her, but there was this one moment where they announced like the next Capcom Pro Tour or something like that, and they said that like the prize pool was like across all the different tournaments or all the different across the whole thing. She goes $30 million, and I was like 30 million. $30 million? Excuse me? And then I look at the screen and it's $30,000. And then I have a second where I realize, oh, it's 30 million yen. It's 30 million yen, which is about $30,000. You take 2 zeros off. Because the yen is about the equivalent of 100 yen's about the equivalent of $1, give or take like $1 or $2. It varies, but I think they actually try to keep it around the dollar value. But yeah, so that was like, okay, that's much more reasonable. Putting up $30 million for a prize pool is even like a cumulative prize pool of like it's several tournaments. Was like, whoa, they have a lot of faith. They have a lot of faith. Okay, not that much faith. They don't have that much faith. 30,000, sure. 30 million, okay, not that much. It was 30 million yen. It reminds me of this time that my friend, he was talking about some scene from an anime or something. He's like, yeah, so this guy is sticking this character up, and he's gonna mug her for like a lot of money, like 1,000 yen. And I'm like, that's like $10. He's like, oh. A million yen. Yeah, exchange rates. I want to talk about a little story that happened to me. So this happened to me. I take public transport About once a week, when I go to visit Kat. And usually, I mean, the bus is an interesting time, right? It's it gets me where I need to go. Um, I've had my fair share of run-ins with experiences with some kind of odd people on the bus, right? Not interacting with them necessarily, but some kind of strange experiences. Probably ones that I've even talked about on this podcast. Well, I had maybe the highlight of all of them the other day, the last time I took the bus. So, I woke up pretty early, and I caught like the 9:15 bus or something. So first things first, I get on the bus, and I step on, and the driver goes, "Hey, we're full. You got to wait for the next bus." I think that's what he said. There were a lot of hearing issues. So first of all, we're on the street, so there's noise there. Second of all, the bus itself is noisy just from the sound of the giant engine. Third, I'm listening to music, which I've turned down to try and hear, like, just, hear him a little better, but I am listening to music. Usually I don't have to talk to the bus driver or, like, have some kind of conversation with him when I get on, so wasn't really expecting this. And fourth, they do this thing in California. I don't know if they've got it where you find folks are listening to this, but we do this weird thing. I guess it's not weird. I guess it makes sense. When COVID started, there's this COVID precaution on the bus so you get onto the bus and there's like where the driver is, where you're standing there, and then there's like this kind of plastic door, this kind of gate that swings out, and I think that's like a COVID thing or like a safety thing or something like that. So the way it works is that it basically blocks you from getting from like the cart, I guess, the cart of the bus itself, like the seating area, to the bus where the bus driver is, and but obviously it like blocks you off if you're trying to get on the bus. So what they do is they swing it. They basically open the door when they stop. They swing the door, this little gate, this plastic see-through gate, and it swings inward. So there's now a barrier between where you're standing at the very front of the bus and the driver's seat. Basically, they're basically closing a door on you. So there's also this barrier in the way where I can't hear what the fuck he's saying, but he's saying something about it's being full, and I'm like, sorry, what? Like, I take my earbud out, I'm like, sorry, what are you saying? Like, I'm really trying to hear him, and eventually he just goes, just get on, and I just, whatever. I pay, I get on, and I turn. This was the most packed I have ever seen the bus. I have ever seen. Like, it was like a can of sardines. It was like a New York subway level. It's usually not this busy, and I figured, for like a 9:15 bus, I'd figured like an early morning bus, I'd expect to be a little busier because people are getting to work. But like 9:15, I'd imagine that most people are probably at work already if they got to take the bus there. But no, I guess ton of people, or get to school or something. Ton of people on there. So I'm like, oh shit, like it's standing room only, and there's people already who are just standing. So I'm like, okay. So I just kind of take my place. I don't want to like wade through the bus and like find look for I'm like, okay, I'm gonna cut my losses. I'll just stand at the front of the bus. I'll hold onto the pole, and I'll just sit tight. So I'm standing there, and on the bus near the front, like in that first row of seats, right next to me, there are two individuals. There's are two main characters in this story, I guess, besides me. There's a man and a woman. The man was like I want to say maybe a 40-year-old Hispanic Latino man wearing sunglasses. The woman looked a little bit older. She was a white lady in her maybe 60s or something, and they were having some kind of conversation, he seemed like he was complaining about something. It was one of those cases. It seemed like they didn't know each other, but they'd started a talk. They'd started some kind of conversation beforehand. Earlier on the bus, they'd happened to sit next to each other. One of them started talking, and I'm mainly hearing this guy talk, and every now and again she's going, I can't really hear what they're saying. He's complaining about something. I don't know. I hear him say like a slur. I hear him say like that word for gay people. That he's not gonna marry some little fucking word for gay people. And I'm like, okay. But again, I can't really hear what he's saying because again, noise on the bus, coming from the bus. I got music in that I'm kind of trying to listen to kind of like get away from people. The incredible number of presences around me. And also the fact that we're on the same side of the bus. So he's talking, he's facing away from me. So he's talking away from me. It's the seats that like line the wall at the very front they're kind of like usually meant for like a disabled or pregnant passenger or something like that. Those they like fold up or something. Homeless people with carts. They can like fold it up and use it as a space to keep their cart or something. Well, it's that type of seating. So I don't really hear I can barely hear what's going on, but I can hear him talking. Eventually, at one stop, a lady in the front gets up on the other side of me, and she gets off, and no one takes her seat for like 2 stops. So I'm like, I guess it's mine now. So I sit down, and I figure like, okay, I brought a book. I like to read on the bus, so I took out my book and opened it up, and now I can hear what this guy is saying. So I am convinced that this guy was some kind of paranoid schizophrenic. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I legitimately think, if not that, some kind of paranoia or some kind of something went wrong. Something's gone off with this guy. Because I can hear what he's talking about. And now, the first thing I hear is him complaining about his neighbors. This would become a running theme throughout the conversation. He's complaining about his neighbors and how apparently they tried to run him over or something and they tried to kill him. And I hear him say something along the lines of, yeah, they got these ugly-ass fake tits because they can't afford the real ones. So already I'm thinking, like, how do you buy real tits? Can't you only buy fake tits? And then he keeps going like, they don't know I know, but I know the fucked up things they be doing to their little daughters, like they putting dildos up their little butts and stuff. At this point, I cannot focus on my book. I'm like, whoa, what? Pardon? And he's just going, and he's just talking about like how he can't like get drunk or anything because when he gets drunk his neighbors try to break into his house and they like throw things in his backyard, and how like they want to kill him so they can take his house or something. It's like they don't even own it but they want it. I don't know what they think because they don't own it. And how like he overheard like he wants to get married or something, again not to a little gay person but to I guess a woman, and how he overheard them in their own backyard saying that if he got married they were going to kill him instantly and take all of his things, so he can't get married yet. And then he was talking about how like his mom, and how his mom is in prison because she tried to run him over once in like 2008 when she threw him out of the house, and then she tried to run him over again a few years later and he went to prison sorry, she went to prison for that, and she's serving like 4 to 8 years or something like that, and he just go, yeah, I come to terms with it, but like she gotta go up there, like she gotta go, she gotta pay for what she did to me. So okay, and then like he just like he got a video back in 2018 of his cousin in Mexico getting beheaded, and this woman on the bus, right? This woman he's talking to, I think she was a little out of it too. She was a little off her marbles herself, because she wasn't like engaging with him in that way where you're just being polite and like trying not to die, where you're like, "Oh, really? Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh." She was like, "Oh, uh-huh." Like she was in get like when he had that line about like the dildos in their little them fucking their daughters with dildos. He was he goes, yeah, I'm not gonna say anything though. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna, I know it's weird to say, but like I'm just, and she goes, oh, you're just reporting it. You're just reporting it. And he's like, no, I'm not like reporting it to the police. I'm just like, yeah, but like I'm report like to someone else, like to you. And she goes, yeah, no, you don't want to report that to the police. Okay, fuck. She is just like, she is really like allowing him to do this on the bus with like 30 people. There's like 30 at least other people on this bus who are all listening to this conversation, because he's very loud. He's very loud. And in fact, there was this one point where he goes, people on the bus be so nosy. And I'm like, dude, I literally cannot ignore you. I'm sitting across from you. Of course, I didn't say any of this out loud. I'm just thinking. I'm like, I'm sitting across from this guy. I have music on. The bus is already loud. I'm looking at a book, right? I'm looking at the book. I can't read. I can't read because I'm too distracted by this guy and this insane stuff he's saying. I literally cannot focus on anything else. I'm trying to read and I can't because it's so distracting. And he really went on this tear where he started talking. Here's where the paranoid thing came from, where I got. He went on this tear about his haters. Like a 2010s like rap pop song about his haters. Excuse me. Because this guy's got haters everywhere. This guy is full on Imagine Dragons. And he's, oh, the misery. Everyone wants to be his enemy, okay? Every single business we passed, he would point out and note to her all the haters he had. We'd go, I went to that McDonald's 10 times. I stopped going. They got fucking haters there. There's these 4 bitches over there. This one, I was drinking my coffee. They got this one fat bitch over there. And her friend, and they were pointing and laughing at me. They think I don't notice. They think I don't know the discrimination. I said, all right, fuck you. I don't like your attitude. So I never go back there again. I go down to this other, he mentioned like some other local restaurant. He's like, they got haters there too. 2 of them. And he's just, every single place had some kind of a hater. He's talking, I even got haters on this bus. I'm gonna knock some of them out. And now, right, like when I heard that, I was thinking, that set off some alarms naturally, because I'm on the bus. I'm in the category of people who apparently, are his haters, contain his haters. So, I'm thinking like, okay, well, logically, I haven't done anything to this guy. When he starts talking about knocking someone out on the bus, I haven't said anything. I don't think I've made eye contact. I looked at him a few times because, of course, he's sitting right across from me. But he's wearing sunglasses. So, like, I don't know. I tried not to look at him after a certain point. I just kind of stare off into the distance out the window while I was just forced to listen to him. But, like, you don't know. You don't know with these people. He, what if he just picks me out? Like, I feel like I'm the most inconspicuous person. I'm just sitting down. I'm looking at my book, trying not to engage at all. Make as little human contact as possible with this person. But like, I don't know. And it really hit this fever pitch, this breaking point for me, where I just could not handle it anymore. And I had to like laugh under my mask when we passed the library, and he goes, "I got that library got haters too," and I'm like, "There's no way. How do you get haters at the library? How? And what?" And he elaborates. He explains. He goes, "There's this bitch," because it's always a bitch, right? "There's this bitch. I ask her for a card. She never wants to give me a card. I think because she racist as fuck. And she thinks I don't know. She's always hella rude to me." I'm like, "Fuck you. I don't like your attitude." I just, this man, he's in a world full of enemies. He's in constant PvP mode. Everywhere he goes, like, the evil energy is just everyone everyone hates this man. There's no real, like, resolution to this story, right? Eventually, he just got off, and I was very glad, right? And after he got off, I was like, finally, I can just read. I've got like 30 more minutes before I get to Cat's place. I can just read. And I look down and I try to read. And for the life of me, I just cannot. I'm thinking too much about this guy. I'm like, I have to process what just happened. This saga that's just unfolded in front of me. I can't, and this happened like the day after. I saw this Reddit post, and it was on like bad design or something, or crappy design subreddit, which is a fun subreddit. But it was this post of like a proposed, or I think it's gonna happen, some highway development in Texas where they're gonna add like 5 lanes to it or something like that. Just in that, like, that car culture, like, just add more lanes. Oh, there's a problem? Just add more traffic? Just add more lanes. Even though I'm pretty sure it's actually been, there's some kind of data to back up the idea that adding more lanes actually makes traffic worse, but whatever. We need to fucking spend money on something. So, like, yeah, I was reading through the comments, and, you know, obviously that thing came up, that argument of, well, you know, the thing that actually reduces traffic is public transportation. If we just reinvested in public transportation, then we could, and, you know, a lot of places would have to it would take a big investment to cut down on traffic. Like, a lot of places are just built for cars and stuff like that. They're very foot traffic or biking hostile, let's say. You know, it would be a big effort, but it would be how you do it. And then of course someone comes in and they point out, well, no, people in America are never going to give up their cars because of the American dream, you know. Oh, they're so into their sense of freedom, you know. I need a car. I can't take public transportation. I don't I'm an American, you know. That's the only reason people don't want to go take public transport. Let me tell you, there's a lot of reasons to not want to take the bus. There's a lot of reasons. I have just had one. The very next day after reading that thread, I had one. And I should mention, you know, this was a story where, of course, there was that one bit where he talked about punching someone on the bus. Of course, that never happened. I didn't legitimately think he was going to do that. I was just, you know, there's like a survival element of, okay, well, I have to consider that this might happen. Just cause this guy doesn't seem entirely, like, on it, you know? there's a lot of other times on the bus where, I've just had to be like, well, there's like a likely, drugged out, maybe homeless guy stomping around behind me, yelling about the government. Um, let me just go into like prep mode. Let me just get a little more ready in case something happens. You're right. It is a thought, especially if I'm taking the bus kind of late or past dark, where I'm thinking, sometimes people will get on the bus and I'll think like, I hope I don't get stabbed. I hope this person doesn't try to stab me. And you're thinking like, that's ridiculous. What? That's ridiculous. And then I remember this story that happened from a few years ago. You can find the video of this. Well, not of it, but of the aftermath of some bus. There was some bus ride where this dude took out a machete and just went over and decapitated someone. Just cut their head clean off. And there is a really, really strange interview like right after it happened with a guy who was also on the bus, one of the, I guess, survivors. And he's just in this like state of shock. He's like very calm, but he's like clearly like not processed it. It's one of those things, like if you get punched, that's pretty easy to process. Like you'll be kind of shaken up, right? If you get attacked. When you see someone get like murdered in front of you, especially in such a like a brutal way, the brain like needs a minute to like run through what just happened, right? It's clearly like unsettled. but you need a moment, and he's in this really rare state where you get to see someone in where they're like still processing it. So like they're not like freaking out. But he's clearly like, yeah, he's kind of out of it. That goes through my mind sometimes, right? Hope I'm not that guy who gets decapitated on the bus. Sometimes someone sits across from you and they set something down, they set down their bag, and you can see in their bag there's some kind of weird device, and I'm like, I hope that there isn't like a random domestic terror event where someone decides to blow up a bus and I happen to be on that bus. Because, like, you never think it's going to happen to you until someone sits down across from you and puts something weird down. You're like, okay, then. I might have even talked about this on the bus, or on the podcast one time. There was one time where, like, this guy, I was, like, sitting across from him, so, like, we could make eye contact, and he was just reaching into his jacket pockets constantly, and, like, I could just like this snapping sound, and then he would like take out shards of like a plastic pen or like multiple plastic pens. It had to have been multiple that he had, and then he would toss them out the window. And then he would just like start tossing like gloves and like hats out the window, like that he would take out of his pockets. And at one point, because of the direction we were going, he tried to throw like a mitten or something out, and the wind actually blew it back and it fell on the ground. And I could see it fall. I just saw this motion. I was trying not to look at him. I could see this motion as it falls onto the ground. I look down at it, and then I look up at him because it seems like that's where it came from. And we make eye contact, and I have no idea what to do. I have no clue. I think I ended up getting it for him, but that was super. Just what the fuck was that about? There's plenty of reasons not to take the bus, dude. There's a lot of reasons. Oh, gee. Anyway. So, the reason this episode is going to be coming out a little later on Monday is that I was up kind of late. So, the reason I wasn't up late, but it got delayed because Sunday, when I usually record, was CEO Taku, and that is a major fighting game tournament. So there's a tournament called CEO, and then there's like it's almost like a spin-off of CEO called CEO Taku, which is specifically more for like this is like weird if you don't kind of know the fighting game community. There's like a classification of fighting games that are just called anime games, which are basically like anime styled fighting games. It's basically, it would be things like Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear, Melty Blood. If Horseplay is listening, Asuka 120% Burning Climax Fist Fuckers, or whatever it's called. Those kinds of games. You look at it and you're like, this is an anime game. You know, as opposed to just other Japanese fighting games like a Street Fighter or a Tekken or even like a KOF, right? There's just like a, I don't know, distinction. Grand Blue is what. What's weird is that like Grand Blue plays in a lot of ways like different from those games, but it's still considered, you know, like an anime fighter because it's like anime. DNF is an anime fighter, even though it doesn't have like air dashing or anything like that, or it's only got like, it has like 1 meter. An anime game with only one resource? What the fuck? That's what City Otaku is for. It's like the anime community. And it was pretty certain that there was going to be some kind of Strive announcement because I thought it was, well, some kind of Guilty Gear related announcement at least. Because like the day of the like the Strive Top 8, the official Arxis Twitter account put out like, ooh, what do you think is coming next for Season 2 of Strive? So I'm like, okay, I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be a character. And then Jabali, who is the origin of the Jabated emote, because he likes to fake people out and pull funny little pranks, he starts tweeting out suspicious tweets referencing much wanted Guilty Gear characters. Something like, does anyone have a XL sized Slayer t-shirt with like the Slayer, like the band logo? Like, does any, might have to take a break. I'm feeling kind of dizzy. And then it was like me if I was a fighting game character, and it was like Johnny Bravo or something. He did like a bunch of those. And it was like, please don't play with my heart like this. Because everyone was expecting a trailer. And now, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, from what I know, a lot of times people who do events, like who run events, aren't actually aware of what the like the content of a trailer or a reveal is going to be. Like, apparently, like whenever you hear like a commentator, you know that thing where the award ceremony is over, they cut back to the commentators, and you could tell they're kind of just stalling for time. Or they're like, all right. Like, they're waiting to get the word through their earpiece that they can, like, wrap it up. So they're just like, oh, well, that was a great tournament. Yeah, you know, this person, they're just filling time and kind of, like, concluding it, just giving some final wrap-up thoughts. And then they get, like, a little thing through their earpiece that says, hey, we're throwing it to trailer, throw it to trailer. And then they'll say, well, it's time to throw it to we've got a very special trailer for you. They'll do something like that, right? They don't know what the trailer's going to be. It's a surprise to them. And I wouldn't even be surprised if, like, Jabali doesn't even know what the trailer exactly is going to be. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. People in production obviously need to know because, like, someone in production has to know just because of, like, they have to like, queue it up and everything. But, like, yeah, it's possible that no one even knows. So I was like, does he even know what it is, or is he's just being a goofball? Well, at the very top of top 8, okay, I was playing a game, which I'll get to in a second. The very, very beginning of the top 8, I was like, okay, top 8 starts around here. I know it's not going to start right away, but let me get there just like a few minutes early, just because they might play a trailer like they did at EVO. They played the Bridget trailer before top 8 began, at the very, very top of it, the top of top 8, top of top 8. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe they'll do the same thing. So I happen to get there right after the trailer plays. I alt tab right afterwards God damn it, and I have to find out. But it was a wonderful surprise. It was not an announcement of a new character. In fact, it wasn't even an announcement for Strive. Because that's right, baby. Xrd is getting rollback. Oh, fuck. That was the worst time. Xrd's getting rollback. Excuse me. That, was not planned. I ate, an hour ago, and it just happened to come up right now. Xrd's getting rollback. Holy shit. That's crazy. People were popping off. I got to see the reaction. Oh, it's so sick. I'm it's actually crazy. I'm gonna be totally honest. Have not put a lot of time into Xrd. I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard to pick up. It's not that different from Plus R, right? I'd have to learn some new Slayer combos and all that, but not it's not like a night and day thing, right? It's not like jumping from Xrd or Plus R to Strive, right? That's a big leap. Plus R to Xrd, not comparatively not as big. But what I have played of Xrd, it was really fun. It's a really fun game. When you just get into a lobby and you start playing sets, it's really good. And you just keep rematching. It's a lot of fun. And it's got that kind of it's got that crack effect where you just want to keep, I'm like, fuck, I just want to keep playing this game. Eventually, I put it down just because the netcode was really difficult. And when when you talk about accessibility, things out of the gameplay itself, the non-gameplay accessibility things are probably even more important than the gameplay things. So, obviously, I always talk about price point. Here's another one. Being able to play the game in the first place once you own it. So, the last time I was like, I want to boot up some Xrd. I open it up. I start up the game. I go to lobbies, see what lobbies people have open. All 0-bar connections. Literally unplayable. Cannot play any of these. So I decide to start my own lobby. I wait for 10 minutes. No one joins. And then I close the game. And then I booted up Plus R. And I found a match within 30 seconds. And that was the last time I ever tried to play Xrd. This is one of the reasons rollback is so important. It's because you can literally just play the game. You just get to play the game. And this was before Strive came out. This was pre-Strive, mind you. It was just... I don't even think I was playing it a weird time of day. It was the afternoon on a weekend or something like that. Unplayable. So, I mean, the lobby system is probably still going to be the way that you're going to play the game, mostly, but as opposed to, the big public lobby, the smaller player lobbies. But I'm fine with that. That's cool. I just want to play the damn game. Because it's really fun. I was not expecting... This is after Fighters. This is the second ever example I can... third, sorry. MKX, then Fighters, and now Xrd. Of a true, honest-to-God rollback retrofit of a 3D fighting game, right? I mean, not not 3D gameplay, but 3D models, which I don't want to get into it again. If you've been listening to this podcast, for a while, I totally went off about this when Fighters rollback got announced a couple weeks ago. So I won't go over that whole spiel again about how rollback works and yada yada, but suffice to say, if you aren't aware, rollback, which is the superior netcode infrastructure, can be very CPU demanding, and so a game typically has to be built around where the CPU usage of the game itself is very optimized. If a game is built around old-ass, busted-ass delay-based netcode, it doesn't have those optimizations. This is not as much of a problem for older 2D games, like sprite-based games, even ones with like 3D backgrounds, because I don't think those really, you probably aren't as demanding as like characters who are constantly animating. But like for a sprite-based game, you can run those really easily because of just how much more, like on PC specifically, on PC, how much more powerful, like basically the gap between the strength of even like a really basic, like just like a shitty $300 laptop or something like that. You can like, yeah, you can kind of brute force it a little easier with 2D sprites, or with a 2D game, a game that uses 2D sprites instead of 3D models. 3D models take a lot more CPU power and GPU power, and so the game has to be kind of built from the ground up to support it. It has to be built with those optimizations in mind in that specific way. Strive was able to catch it early enough in development that they were able to build the game such that it does work, and does work really well. When NRS put out MKX, it took them 8 months and like $1 billion. Not that much. I'm exaggerating, but like a lot of money to retrofit it with rollback, and now they just have it. So it's very uncommon, right? It's very uncommon, and the cost and the time investment, right? That was the thing. Like there's like been a Twitter account like, does Xrd have rollback yet or something, or like how many days until Xrd is playable or something like that. And there's been this demand for getting rollback into Xrd specifically, but also other games like Grand Blue. And I was a realist about it, and I was like, realistically, I wouldn't count on anything official. As far as I knew, there was some kind of a mod that someone was working on, to like a rollback mod for Xrd. Now, from what I know, now the +R rollback was a fan mod that was eventually like just like licensed or contracted by ArcSys to implement officially. Sick move, ArcSys, thank you. Maybe the same thing happened with Xrd. I'm not sure yet. If I just do like, I'll just do a cursory glance while I'm talking, but rollback. I would not. I was like, okay, I wouldn't expect anything official. And maybe this is, I don't know if this is developed in-house or anything. I can't see any indications that it was from fans, but like the same way that +R was. So yeah, I was like, yeah, don't expect anything. It'd just be too demanding. And for a game that's almost 10 years old, I mean, the original version of Xrd came out in 2013, 2014. I think 2014 was console release. 2013, 2014. This is a game that's almost 10 years old, and each version of the game, Revelator and Rev 2, had like diminishing sales. Xrd was not a hot seller. Even though the game was good, it was not a hot seller because ArcSys is bad at marketing. Or they were worse at marketing back then. So I was surprised. I was taken aback. I was knocked out of my knickers, dude, by the news. It makes me happy, though. And, in fact, so it's going to be PC only, which makes sense. It makes sense. +R was PC only, too. I'm pretty sure the BlazBlue rollback updates were also PC only. Actually, no, I think it was PS4. I have no idea, but I forget. But there's going to be a beta, just like they did with Plus R, and it's starting in October. Like, next month, within the next couple days. Or next couple weeks. Do they have a date? Do they have a date? Rollback date. I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, no specifically, nothing specifically, but in October. So that's freaking sick. I gotta go learn some Slayer combos now. I feel like it doesn't play that differently. You know, I can... this is actually so cool. Like, the fact that you can have, like, 3 distinct flavors of Guilty Gear that are all gonna be playable and good online. It's gonna be so sick. It's gonna be so cool. It would be so awesome. It would be so cool. Anything else about Exerd's rollback? No, I think that was everything I had to say about it. It was unlikely. It was a pipe dream, but now we can finally lay that to rest. Actually, there was something kind of stomach churning. So I think Daru Ino made some kind of like thing about like, hey, he made a tweet about, I hope the Exerd update has... Oh, right, I did remember. I hope the Exerd update has... I remembered what I was going to talk about. The Exerd update has like a dash macro, like in Strive, and someone goes, you want Slayer with a dash macro? Which, to be fair, and I think Daru was like, actually, yeah, I take that back. Which gives me like a ton of anxiety about if they're going to keep backdash cancels in Strive. Please keep it in some way. Don't just add invulnerability on the startup of his moves. Leave in the cool execute. The invulnerability isn't the cool part. The cool part is the execution. But anyway, the fact that it's like this weird trick you got to do. Like, the physical part of that trick is more interesting, I think, than just getting invulnerability. It's great. It helps him with a lot of things, but it's really the doing of it that's cool. Yeah, I hope they don't just... So, when, for the last couple months, Arxis would just kind of tweet out every now and again, like, hey, Guilty Gear Exerd on PC is going to have some server maintenance. And of course, everyone would be like, oh my god, is it happening? Is it happening? Is it happening? And then it would be like, it would finish, and then nothing would happen. But they would do it, like, fairly often. And what's weird about it is, again, why are you doing this for a game that's like, why is a game that is older getting, like, server maintenances? Or any kind of, like, maintenance? Why is... network maintenance, I think, is what they would call it, but... why is that even... why are you even updating this game anymore, right? Like, it's very weird. Because it's, you know, it's peer-to-peer. It's not like they got to keep servers really running besides for matchmaking. What's the dealio with that? And no one even plays ranked matchmaking on Exerd because you can't choose... because the netcode used to be so bad that no one would play ranked because you couldn't choose what connections you got. You couldn't, like, filter out connections in ranked. So was this related to that? I have no idea, but it was. I wonder. I hope we find out. Anyway, the reason that I was late to hearing the Exerd announcement. So I installed I want to say last month, there was a sale of some kind, and one game that was on sale that I was just curious about was Fallout New Vegas. And finally, once I was done with the E.Y.E video and I said, I'm going to take this weekend to do nothing. I'm not going to do anything. I decided to install the game. So I started playing Fallout New Vegas. I feel like before I begin, I should talk about my background with Fallout. I've only really played Fallout 4, and it was a few years ago, and I think I played like 10, 15 hours, and then I quit. It wasn't really quitting. It was just I put it down, and I never picked it up again. I thought it was neat. That was it. It didn't really light me on fire. So, but I've heard like it's the best entry in the series. So I went and I was like, all right, I hear a lot of good things about New Vegas. I heard that it's the best one. I don't know. People are always gonna debate. Well, I think Fallout Tactics is better, or whatever that one's called. So I booted up New Vegas, and the game boots up really strangely. So it has like a launcher, like a tiny little window for a launcher, and you get to just choose all your graphics settings and all that. And naturally, I want to play it in borderless windowed 1920 by 1080. That's my monitor's resolution. When you do that, there's no borderless window, there's just windowed, and so it opens like the corner of the game is like off screen. There's like a whole corner, like part of the screen that's just off screen. And I'm like, that's dumb. And I can't like remove my mouse from the window. It's like locked into the window. I have to like alt tab, and then I tab back, and I can't like do some finagling to get it to fit in a window. So I'm like, oh fuck, okay. I close it out and I go, you know what? This is like a Fallout game. I should probably check if this might be a pain to do, might be a hassle, but I might want to go install some quality of life mods before I jump in. So I found a Reddit thread of just the basic essentials for quality of life mods, and I should mention which ones I'm using. So quality of life mods. Here we go. So the ones that I got from this thread, and this person, because I don't want to like mod the fuck out of my game. I want to like play the game. I just want some improvements to make it a little easier to play. So this person says quality of life mods for Fallout New Vegas. Never touched it before. Never touched Fallout before in general. And there's a comment that recommended E.Y.E's unofficial patch, one tweak, New Vegas anti-crash, and the New Vegas 4GB enabler. So that is what I am using. The process of installing those was a little mind-boggling. You definitely used up a lot of my brain power. Because I had to learn, first of all, I had to make a Nexus Mods account. Second off, I had to like install some other software to make this thing work. So like so the main thing was like Yup, aka E.Y.E's unofficial patch, which is a huge bug fix patch for New Vegas. The two biggest ones were I would assume were the Yup and one tweak. Which is one tweak is just like a bunch of extra settings, including borderless window. and it fixes alt tab so the game plays more friendly with it, which was also very valuable. A lot of mods, what you can do is you can just put them in like the data folder of New Vegas in like your Steam folder. I had to install for Yup. I had to install something called a mod loader, which I think the one I used was Loop, which is basically the game. So like when you open the game, when you run the game, it looks into the folder and it runs things in a certain order. So like if you have DLC, it'll run like the base game and then the DLCs that you have. So if you're modding, there's certain like mods that you need to have you need to make the game run it in a specific order. Or load them in a specific order, or something bad will happen. I don't know what, but something bad will happen. It'll probably crash, I'm assuming. So I had to like install this thing, move the files into the folder for the game, and then open up this like program and switch around the order that things were loaded in so that the Yup got loaded second underneath New Vegas like itself. And then I had to like make a new folder. Oh, I had to install this thing called the New Vegas Script Extender, NVSE, which like makes other mods work, which are like some of the other like anti-crash things. And I think One Tweak also uses that. And then I had to make like a folder for that inside the games folder, and then I had to make a plugins folder in that. It was a lot, but like once I got everything good, it worked honestly like a charm. I was able to boot up the game from Steam. Everything worked. It boots in borderless window in my monitor's resolution. Fantastic. And I have not encountered a crash yet. I am how many hours do I have in this game? 11.2 hours so far over the course of about 2 days. I was definitely, I delved into this one. So I should get into the game itself and my thoughts on the game itself. So I will be the first one to admit that I am not I am a known open world hater. I got haters in the cellar. I got haters in New Vegas. That's the plot of this game. The plot of the game is I got haters in New Vegas. That dude is such a character. So I'm not like an open world kind of guy. I usually get bored with them and just kind of drop off. I prefer more handcrafted experiences where I'm going like a little more linear, right? So I didn't quite know what to expect, but I try to go into things with an open mind. So, first impressions of New Vegas. The game looks kind of ugly. It looks kind of bad, and I understand that it was like by like not the biggest studio. This is an Obsidian game made in an engine that was already kind of old in 2011. So I will give it that. I won't hold that as much against it. I mainly noticed it with the character creator. I was looking at my character and I was like, I look kind of... I don't know if there's a way to make my character look good. So, second thing is I've been enjoying it so far. From what I can say, from my 11-hour playtime, I've enjoyed it. It is an open world game. I don't have that much to compare it against because I don't have much experience with other games in the genre. But you walk around from location to location. I will say, it does feel very... it feels very, very. Certain things are facilitated, if that makes sense. So, do I want to spoil anything? I don't know. Do I want to spoil anything? Let's just say that if once you get to a location, if you do, I feel like I'm actually getting rewarded for most of the quests that I'm doing. I feel like I'm actually like getting rewarded by being with like story things and not just yeah, you're getting caps and items or levels, experience, all that. But I feel like I'm actually kind of getting rewarded in a story sense where the quests are interesting. So the quests lead to interesting things. For instance, so the main plot of the game so far is that you're a courier. That's kind of what I think the generic name for the character is, the courier. You're a courier, you're delivering a package, and you get stopped by some gangsters, some kind of like 1950s style mobsters, sort of. They shoot you in the head and they leave you for dead. And a kind of mysterious robot pulls you out of your shallow grave and takes you to a doctor to fix you up. That's where the game starts. So you're trying to do a couple things. You're trying to find the fuckers who shot you, or the one specific guy. You're trying to find that guy. I'll probably have the option to kill him. I'm expecting that. I'll also probably have the option not to. I don't know. And you're trying to specifically get back the thing you were trying to deliver, because you're trying to get your payment from the person who hired you. So you start out and you're basically just following their trail. And obviously you are led, you're kind of led towards New Vegas, where he is. I don't think they tell you up front he's in New Vegas. I think you got to find some other stuff out, but the game is kind of pushing you in that direction, because from the starting area to New Vegas is actually not a super long distance. However, it's incredibly dangerous. It's basically like they tell you, like, yeah, if you go out there, there's going to be a bunch of like mutant death claws who are going to rip the shit out of you. You have to be kind of insane to want to take that road. And I'm assuming that if you do try and step out there, it's just constant death being flung at you, and there's no way you're going to get to New Vegas in any reasonable amount of... Maybe you can if you're really good. But so you're kind of pushed towards... You're incentivized to basically take the long way around. You're going to take the long way, because they also recommend that you kind of stay on the highway, because, again, there's monsters out there. And along the highway, there's a couple branching paths and places where you can go here or there. There's a main route to New Vegas, but you're kind of incentivized. Like, you'll stop at a town and you'll get like a mission to like go to a different town. So, for instance, here's one neat experience. So you go to what's the order of events that this happens in? So there's like a town that's basically been taken over by this gangster, these gangsters called the Powder Gangers. It's this really small, it's basically like a little amusement park, actually. It's got like a hotel and everything. So I clear out the Powder Gangers, and I talk to the deputy, and he says that the sheriff was killed and they need a new sheriff. And there's a guy he's thinking of, who might be able to do the job. And there's like a couple different people I think you can go to. I chose to go to a guy who was like, I think the old sheriff, actually, of the town or something like that. And he like shot someone, and he's actually doing jail time now. So there's a jail nearby, which is not even serving as a jail anymore. It's being run by the Powder Gangers. There's basically a jailbreak, and now they've taken over the prison, and they're using it as a fortress. So you pay your way in, you talk to him, and you convince him to come back if you can get him a pardon on his sentence, because basically what he figures is eventually the NCR, the New California Republic, basically the government, so to speak, the rule of law and order. He figures at some point they're going to come in and overtake the prison, take it back, and when that happens, he does not want to be he does not want to be caught messing around. Basically, he does not want to be caught leaving, breaking his sentence. He wants to. He's just hanging out and just kind of biding his time, letting things sort of happen and not getting involved. He's keeping low, so that when he gets out, he can just serve his time. So you basically convince him like to come back, but he says, I'll only do it if you can find some way to get me a pardon. And he says that there's a way that you can get him a pardon. There's like an NCR ranger station that's nearby. So you walk a little to like the southwest or whatever, and there's like this whole station that's up a hill, and it's got a bunch of rangers and all that. And you can talk to a guy, and you can there's like a speech check, there's like some kind of charisma check or something like that, where you can convince him to give the guy a pardon, or you can just straight up pay. I wasn't investing into speech, so I had to just pay. So you get him his pardon, but while you're at the ranger station, there's an NPC you can talk to who will give you a quest. And the quest is, hey, there's this town that we haven't heard of, or we haven't heard from in a while. It's called Invok? Whatever. It's something like that. There's a town nearby that we haven't heard of from in a bit. I'm kind of worried about it, but I have to keep my watch here. So would you mind, can I just hire you to go check out what's happening, right? I'm a little worried maybe something's happened over there, but don't get killed or anything, all right? Stay safe. So you're like, okay, you follow the road. It's kind of a side road up to this town. You get there, and something has happened. I'm not going to spoil it, but something has happened. Pretty shocking, actually. And you are introduced to a major part of the world. And I will say that it was a very effective introduction. You'd kind of heard of this thing or these people before. And, but you have not. You sort of know what they do. You're told about them in the beginning, in the intro. You're introduced to Caesar's Legion, basically. I didn't really know anything about them. And now I do. So, yeah, that was a pretty shocking way to be introduced to them. And it was one of those things, it's like, wow, I could have just totally missed this if I didn't take that quest. I never would have even bothered coming over here unless I was, like, really exploring the map. And it was just this thing where, like, okay, you go to... Because, I mean, when you get to Prim's the town that needs a new sheriff. When you get there, there's already, like, a guy who tells you, like, hey, be warned, this whole place is it's overrun with powder gangers, so watch out. You can just leave at that point. You can just skip this whole giant thing, right? And that's kind of shocking to me. So it kind of reminds me of like Final Fantasy VI, where there's, in the second half of that game, there's all these incredible character stories, but if you don't know where to go to find them, you'll just totally glaze over them, which is one of the reasons I recommend playing that game with a non-spoiler walkthrough. Just so you know, like, what to do to see all the great stuff in that game. So what I can say about being only 10 hours in is that I feel like the game is actually rewarding me with I feel rewarded for doing quests and for taking quests from people and not just like, because I'm like just a I just kind of want to go do the main story, and I feel like, oh, if I do side quests, I'm just gonna get bored and I'm gonna drop the game. But I feel like legitimately, like, when I stop to do a side quest, it always leads to something kind of interesting, where I feel like I've been introduced to some new thing in the world, or something's been developed. And There's another example. Oh god, yeah. There's the thing that a storyline I really liked. Fuck it, I'll just start spoiling stuff. Just skip to a timestamp if you don't want to hear me talk about like side quests or whatever in New Vegas. There's where does it start from? You have to find. Oh yeah, so you find this town called Novak, and they have their main attraction is this giant dinosaur. It's like a tourist attraction, and inside the dinosaur there's a gift shop, which is great. I love that. There's a little gift shop inside the dinosaur, and the guy in the gift shop, he has like 1,000 like little plastic models of the dinosaur that he's trying to sell, and he's like lamenting how no one ever buys any. And I actually like went into his room, and I was like, he has like a bunch of them just strewn all around that he just can't sell off. And I'm like, so I went back and I bought a dinosaur. He doesn't say anything, unfortunately. I wish he had like a line if you buy his dinosaur. That would be funny. But if you go up the stair, the dinosaur is like a building basically. If you go up the stairs and up I think up a ladder or something, there's like there's a guy who hangs out in the mouth of the dinosaur, who's like a sniper, and he usually just keeps watch from the tower. He just shoots people out of the tower if they're or like wild animals or something. He's just like the town like watchman. So you go and you talk to him, and you find out that he was involved. He knew something about the Powder Gangers. He was in a gang. No, it wasn't the Powder Gangers. The guys who shot you are from a gang called the Great Khans. That reminds me. Not the Powder Gang. They're different. Too many gangs. Too many gangs. Too many gangs in this game. This is a gang game. The Great Khans are the guys who shot you. So you get some tips that like, oh yeah, he knows this guy who was in this like checkered suit. He stopped by like a day ago. And so you go up to talk to him. I think his name is Manny. And you ask him about like what he knows about him. You find out that he used to be in a gang. You're assuming the Great Khans, and you can actually go into his room, find a little computer with a message from a guy in the Great Khans who I think is the one who shot you. Telling him like, oh, you'll come back to us someday or something like that. Or he just wants to like live out his life in a little town basically. And so what I forget exactly like what the incentive is, but basically he tells you that there's like some ghouls, some feral ghouls who have been like coming over by the town, and he can't investigate because he's got to keep watch. Everyone's got to keep watch in this game. So he asks you to go investigate it for him. So you go in the direction that they're coming from. You end up finding a old derelict rocket launch facility from the old world. And you go inside, there's a bunch of ghoulies in there, and someone on an intercom tells you to like come to the top floor up like a metal staircase. So you go up there, you make your way through, you find the staircase, and it turns out that there is like a religious cult that is their base of operations is in this rocket launch facility, and they're all ghouls. They're all ghouls. It's like a ghoul cult, and they're basically keeping the ones who have turned feral on the first floor. I guess they can't get through the door. Well, actually, I say they're all ghouls, but the guy who's been talking to you, like barking at you over the intercom, you open up the door, and he's like a human. You're like, you're not, like, he calls you like smooth skin, like that's their derogatory term for like non-ghouls. And he goes like, you're a human. He's like, no, I'm not. He's okay, that's weird. So basically you talk to the leader of this cult, and he's got this whole thing about how we're gonna go into the great beyond or something. which is whatever. They're like Nirvana, like the elves in Lord of the Rings. They're gonna go to Nirvana, and you're like, okay, but he goes, before we can do it, we need to. Would you mind helping us because the basement, our basement where we like pray. He doesn't say like before we can do it, but he says like our basement where we pray is overrun with these like invisible dudes, some kind of invisible demons he calls them. So you agree to go down. You go down in the basement, and there's a bunch of like other mutants called Nightkin, and they're wearing these. They're the stealth boys, which are just the invisibility cloaks, visibility cloak items, because apparently like I think there was like a shipment of them in either that facility or another one that was just left over for like 100 years. So the Nightkin are like holed up down in this basement, and so you go down, you kill all of them, you come back up, and he's like, "Oh, it's time for the Great Beyond." So you're like, "Okay." People start running out of the top floor. They're running all the way down to the basement. You go down, you find this passageway that you could have found earlier, but now there's you find out that there's these rockets underground. And basically, the Great Beyond is they're all going to get into these rockets, and they're going to shoot off into space or wherever. And you're like, what? And the leader tells you that what's going to happen is that, unfortunately, basically, this guy, the one human guy whose name I forget, came to their cult and was convinced he was a ghoul, despite clearly not being. And eventually they just accepted it, and they just allowed his delusion. And they kept him around partially because he was really good with electronics, and he helped them make a lot of progress in getting the rockets operational again. You're like, oh, you just kind of used him then. And he goes, well, no, he was a gift. He was a gift from the Great Beyond or whatever. He was sent to help us. Like, that's how he rationalizes it. Or he doesn't know about this. The human guy is still convinced he's a ghoul. So you end up helping them get some items to finish the rockets. And then the leader makes this speech, and he's like, 2 brave humans have helped us. I think you can actually totally skip a bit of this if you just go straight to like the observation deck. But he goes like, 2 brave humans, they helped us, and he especially thanks like the scientist guy. And then like they all load into the rocket ship, and you can talk to him, and he's like completely gutted. He's like, how they used me. He's so destroyed by this revelation that he was being basically used the whole time in supposedly this like well-meaning sense. And so you end up you can convince them to like go hang out at Novak and be like I don't know, some kind of do something over there, and just like try to integrate back into human society. And he decides that he might as well give it a shot. So you go up to the observation deck, you hit launch, and you just see the rockets just woo. I don't know if they crashed yet, but one of them takes a loop. One of them takes a loop, and then they go off screen. So maybe later on you can find one of the crashed rockets. That would be cool. Yeah, but like it was a really cool little story. I really enjoyed it, and then I tabbed over and started watching Guilty Gear Top 8. By the way, that was a great Top 8. Go watch it if you want a recommendation for like if I had to pick one game. Razzo versus Apology Man. That was a actually great match. Razzo's Leo versus Apology Man's Faust. Really fucking fun match to watch. Anyway, New Vegas. It's cool. I've been so there is an appeal, right? There is an appeal in this game for me. And the appeal that I was reminded of is I love looting. I love going and looting shit and stealing and taking it for myself. I love taking things. I love going into a place and finding money and ammo and stuff like that. It's great. It's so much fun. There's something that I like so much about it. And I got a perk, or whatever they call them. I got a little perk when I leveled up. I chose to invest in one that makes more caps appear around the world. So what I found is that actually, even in places you've already searched, caps will just appear, which is great. I made so much money just exploring like the missile lab, the rocket lab. I made so much money just looking around desks and things like that. I was up to like 700 caps. So I could just brute force pay my way through certain parts of the game now. Which I had to for something. I think I had to pay like 500 of those to get one of the things for the rocket because I didn't meet a speech check. Now I could have gone. There was another side quest where I needed like a science skill to disable some like auto turrets that would have made something a huge pain in the ass. So I actually just left and just kill. I was like really close to leveling up, and I was like, let me just kill some enemy. Let me just run around and kill some like mutant wildlife until I level up, and then I'll just dump all the points from my level up into science. And then I did, and it made it much easier. I love lockpicking. The lockpicking is weird. It doesn't feel like it was designed for PC. So, it's just a regular, Bethesda lockpicking minigame. Sort of minigame. But the controls are what's strange. So, you basically... I don't know why they did it like this. So, there's two parts. If you're familiar with this, they all work the same. There's two parts. The bobby pin and the whatever screwdriver lock that you're using to like push the lock itself. The cylinder. And you move the pin until you get into the right area, and then the lock will unlock after you put pressure on it. The way it works on PC, for some godforsaken reason, is you put you move, like, you put pressure on the lock with WASD. I think you just press any of them, and you move the bobby pin with the mouse, which is weird because it isn't like a one-to-one movement with your mouse. It doesn't like lock it. You have free mouse during it. Weirdly enough, you have free mouse during it, and it doesn't just like lock your mouse into the center and then you just move it, and you can just move your mouse in a circle or something like that. No, it's this weird, like, a lot of response issues where if you try to go under like 90 degrees, you have to like start moving your mouse in a really weird way because of how like low sensitivity it is. It's really odd. It's not like a huge issue, but it feels like there was a better way they could have done that. Like, move the bobby pin with A and D and then just put pressure with W or S or something like that. I don't know. I feel like you could have done that much better. It's not a huge deal, and I love lockpicking. I love lockpicking and opening things. I had to be reminded to save often, because when I went into the prison where the powder gangers were controlling it, I opened up a box and I stole something, which immediately made everyone hate me. I got haters in the prison. Made everyone hate me. And I was like kind of far in. So yeah, I did not have any saves before then. It was a fucking nightmare. I only got out because I happened to get like a stealth boy before that. And I literally just stealthed my way out because I could not shoot my way out. There were too many enemies. I did not have a strong enough weapon to take on all of them. It's hard to take on like 4 guys at once, I feel like, even if you have like a strong weapon or something like that, and no companion, which I didn't have at the time. So I just I just ran out the door, and then I just put on stealth, and I just I snuck away. Whew. Yeah, so that taught me to save often. Let's see. So, I have to say, overall, I'm enjoying my time with the game. I will probably play more of it. See some more stuff in it. I haven't made it to New Vegas yet. When I left off, I was just walking through the I forget exactly what the last thing I did was, but I didn't have anything else written in my notes, so I am going to try and get one more video out before the end of the month. It's not going to be like a typical video that I do, but it's something I've wanted to do for a while, so yeah. Probably gonna call it to a close here. If you've been listening this far, thank you so much for listening. If you have a question, leave it down in the comments below, and I will definitely get to it next time. But please leave it in the form of a question, because I don't just want to read your thoughts out loud. I guess we did have one question where someone asked what the title meant. I just hat. Yeah. Don't have anything else to say. Patreon. New video out. Watch the E.Y.E video. I worked way too hard on it. Bye. Whoops. That wasn't my... Okay, bye.